Good morning, Shelley.
Morning, Amelia.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great, thanks. Look, thank you so much for doing this. I recently did your Parasite program, and I've had all these questions percolating in my head, and other people that I've told about it asking questions. So I'm like, well, one way to do it would be to like clear this up for everyone. So it's really great that you could make the time to do this, and I'm excited. So let's jump in
Cool.
because I've got a very long list.
I know.
So, um, so let's start at the beginning. Tell us about a little bit about your personal health journey and how you became interested in parasites.
So, very quick version is that a decade ago, basically, I was told by the medical world that I was going to die. I was so unwell for many, many different reasons. Like, basically, my whole body was broken and every system, nervous system, trauma, emotion, like just everything. After being a chartered accountant and an investment banker had come to a head. I was a perfectionist and a people pleaser and just all of those things, and my body crashed. And while the medical world spent the next 2 years telling me there was nothing that they could do for me, and I reached out to people all around the world and specialists from all around the world, and I was in my bed literally with no brain function, not like asleep for 23 hours a day. I still got friends that saw me during those times where like my parents had to take full-time care of me. And eventually, about 18 months into the journey, a local New Zealand doctor actually said, like, try bone broth and fermented foods and just some food as medicine basic principles. And so my parents implemented that for me. And then I could stay awake for 3 hours. And so, with those 3 hours that I was sitting in my bed, I still couldn't get out and actually live a full life. I was on the internet. I was the ultimate Dr. Google because the medical world couldn't help me. So I was like literally just sitting. I bought a laptop that I'd never had before. And I sat in bed with those 3 hours that I was awake trying to research and Google my way to getting better. And as I was on Dr. Google, I came across Jay Davidson, who happens to be the founder of Cellcore, the products that I use now. And he, at that point in time, so a decade ago, there was a summit, a 3 week summit all around parasites. I didn't know what parasites were. I came from, a very sheltered life, I guess. Like this just hadn't, I didn't come from a farm. I didn't, like, I always grew up with animals and stuff, but I'd never really heard of the word parasites. Came from banking and accounting. We didn't talk about parasites there either. But I was really intrigued. And so I literally from bed just watched these recordings of all of these doctors from around the world, this whole summit that every single day it was like 7 or 8 hours worth of recordings. And it took me a few months to get through watching everything, but I was like, that's a part of my piece of my health. It's not my full piece. I could understand that, but I was like, I've definitely got parasites. Like, this is. So I reached out to Jay at the time and, like, just through the internet sort of thing. He wasn't my medical practitioner. But still, there was no doctors that were willing to help me do parasites and like what that even meant, like a cleanse in New Zealand, or that was willing to work with me. They all poo-pooed it and said it wasn't true. I was wasting my money. I was crazy. Like just all of these things that clients today still get told. So I was like, I'm going to have to study this and become qualified so then I can do my own testing and get myself better. And so, long story short, I got qualified. I then learned about the lab testing for parasites. I did my own lab testing. And to this day, the lab that I used, they rang me and they were like, "Who is this patient of yours?" And I was like, "It's actually me." And they were like, "That is the worst load of parasites we've ever seen. This
Wow.
person must almost be dead." And I was like, "This is me." And I'm talking to you on the
I am
phone.
nearly dead.
Yeah. And the scary part is, Amelia, now looking back, is that piece of paper that showed, like that lab test that showed my parasites, what I know now is that that won't have even been the full load because not all of them even show up under the under the microscope.
Um,
And it also depends, and this is, I'm telling you this because it also makes sense for other people that have had lab testing. It's only on one day. So when you do a stool sample, if the parasites don't show up in your stools on that day, so imagine that was just the ones that showed up on Tuesday. I'm just making that day up. What about the different ones that showed up on Wednesday or Thursday? Like, so we got a snapshot, a very small snapshot.
wow.
And so that is then. So I believed in
If
it.
they're in your body, but they're not coming out in your stool. I see what you're saying.
Yeah,
Okay, so
because
I think the ones that are dying are coming out in your stool. So
yeah,
they're the ones that show up in the
yeah.
stool
And
sample.
what if they're not dying, and what if they haven't shown up? Or what if some parasites are so small you can't even see them under the microscope?
Right, okay.
So it means that what you're seeing, even when you pay for a lab test, it's still at a point in time on a
The
certain day.
snapshot.
Yeah. Yeah. And if yours don't come out on that day, you could have a stool sample that's a false negative.
Okay, got it. Got
Yeah.
it. That was one of
Yeah.
my questions. Great.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Well, a false positive, like a false negative. Yeah, got
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, got it. So, how do people contract parasites, and what percentage of the population do you estimate, in your experience, have them at any point in time?
So Dr. Todd Watt, who's the other founder of Cellcore, he basically says if you've got a pulse, you've got a parasite. Like, and that's a big call for a
Wow.
doctor to come out and say that and lead such a brand, right? Like he's got an
Mhm.
FDA endorsed brand and he will say that. You can Google that and he's quoted saying that. And why he says this is, are you ready for the list? I'll do it in simple English, but these
Yeah.
are all the ways you can get parasites. One, you can be born with them. So mothers pass them
You've gotten, yeah,
Yep, so that's one way. So if you've got them in pregnancy, you're going to pass them on to your offspring.
yeah.
You get them
Which
from
most women would have, right?
absolutely. And so for me, as part of when I was thinking about getting pregnant, I did my stool test again just to make sure that I didn't have them going into pregnancy because I didn't want to pass them on to Harvey and my son. And then when Harvey was 4 months old, I did his stool test to make sure he didn't have any at that point. I'm not
Yeah,
saying he's never going to have them,
yeah.
but at least we've got a starting point to work with. And
Mhm.
so pregnancy is one way. Animals, so farm animals, yes, but also domestic animals. So that's
Right.
cats and dogs. And the thing I find really fascinating about this point with animals is when you're pregnant, once again, I can talk about this because it's in my recent history, you're told not to touch the cat litter. Well, why are you told not to touch the cat litter, right? What is in the cat litter that you shouldn't have?
Mm.
Right? What is that giving you and why aren't we allowed it? So,
Toxic
regardless,
osmosis.
yeah, right? And so that's a type of parasite as well. And
Mhm.
that's recorded as a parasite on the CDC website. So this information
Right, okay.
isn't even hidden, it's there. And so then the other thing about your dogs, a lot of people's dogs will sleep on their beds, whether it's at night or during the day.
Mhm.
And so the parasites come out there and stay. They don't die as soon as they're out of the body. They've actually got some of them up to a 3 month shelf life or a lifeline where they
Oh,
stay alive, right? So then you get them from small humans.
yeah.
So that doesn't even mean you need a small human. That might be that you work in a daycare or you work in the library or you work at a swimming pool. Because
Mm.
the other thing is, and this is straight from the CDC website as well, what I'm about to quote, they stay alive in chlorinated water for 3 months.
Wow.
So you only need a little child.
Like preserves them.
Right? So you only need a little child to have a parasite and it decide to come. And remember, the other thing that I really had this like, lesson hammered home to me recently with something going on with Harvey. They get in through scratches. So if your little child has got a scratch going into the swimming pool and there's a parasite alive in the swimming pool, it's that exposed skin that they can now get in and you might not even know. And especially with little humans, like if you don't know, if their stools always look squishy, because that's the nappy, you're not going to recognize that it's gone from being a perfectly well-formed poo to now a squishy poo overnight, which would then trigger an alert that your child's got a parasite. And
Mm.
often, once your child's got a parasite, well, mum probably, kids touch things, like I talk about it and I don't mean it rudely, but it doesn't matter how I think of myself as quite clean conscious. And
Mhm.
there's definitely things that like just fast. Harvey is fast, and I will some days I'm just like, how did that happen? And it only takes one of those, how did that happen, for a parasite to pass
Mhm.
from the child to the mum to the other siblings to the
Right.
dad, and then we pass them through sex.
Right.
So mum can be at home with the child and pass it. The other thing is you don't even need to have sex because they also come out through bodily fluids. So if mum or dad is sweating during the night, Do-do-do-do-do-do. They can crawl across the sheets, and you might not even be on a protocol. Like this is just another way. And so it's passed without you even recognizing that it's passed.
Hey.
And then, and also, like my friends, you'll remember my days of dating. My friends used to be like, when I was dating, they'd be like, "Are you going to stool test anyone that you go on a date with? Because like they could give you parasites. Like you got to be careful." And they joke about it, but that is the honest truth. And obviously, I didn't stool test them, but that is how it happens. Then you've got traveling. So travel, and that's not just third world countries. That is literally just any country, but specifically third world countries. You're like, I don't want to name drop, but you're thinking of the Indias, the Thailand, the Africa, the Pacific Islands. Then you've got water. So water passes them. So
Yeah.
in New Zealand, a big thing for like people from the 70s and 80s, like when they were born in that age group, a lot of those people, myself included, we grew up where it was like the stream water when you went on a hike was really healthy and clean. Just drink from the stream. Like, why not? You've run out of your water that you've taken on your hike. Well, if they've got parasites in that stream water, you've picked it up and it stays in your body. Then, Amelia, you've got unwashed. We're not even done with all the ways. So you can see why Todd Watt is like basically
Yeah.
everyone. Then any of your fruit and vegetables washed in water that has got parasites in it. Then you've got sushi and raw seafood parasites. You've got raw meat, steak, especially. You can get parasites from steak. Then you've also, I know you'll be like, what the heck? What are we meant to do? And it seems very overwhelming, but there is hope. But so then you've got all your meat as well. Oh, and then the other big one, major category for parasites is pigs. Pigs are known worldwide for being filled with parasites. So that's your pork and your bacon.
Whether it's cooked or
Mhm.
you can't, they don't die when you cook it.
No, well, it's just like chlorine doesn't kill them.
Oh,
Heat doesn't
okay.
also, some, like, I'm not saying that. And then also, Amelia, for the really, and this is what trips a lot of people up, for the healthy of the healthy, the ones that love to get out and do all those great things like ground their feet and earth their feet in the grass every morning. Well, if a dog with a parasite pooed on that grass 3 months ago, we're not even talking about yesterday, you can get it that way. So it's like, while we joke about it, and I get that people find it really confronting, and they're like, but how did I get it? It's almost like re-asking the question and going, well, how didn't you get them? Like, do you live in
Yeah.
a bubble? Like, and I don't mean that in terms of doom and gloom. And you know, my whole philosophy around health isn't doom and gloom, but I think the conversation needs to change and be like, we've probably got them. So what are we going to do about it?
Just a quick question on Asia. We went to India in 2018. At the end of the trip, my husband started getting unwell. We went to Africa and he was really sick when we were in Africa. He could barely get out of bed for most of the time we were there for 10 days or something. And we got home and he was really sick for weeks. He just didn't come right. He lost 10 kilos in 1 week when we were in Africa. And for a year, he didn't gain that weight back. He got better, but is there a chance that that parasite might still be in his system? And how come he's better if it is? And
Well,
all that stuff.
all great questions that I'm going to segue off our questions for a second because it will help you. So then a lot of people, I'll come to your husband in a second. A lot of people will go, but why don't Indians and Africans and like third world come? Why
Yeah.
aren't, well, because they eat differently. They actually, so if we all started off like a Harvey, I'm not trying to say he's a perfect, but let's just pretend a child that ate a lot of herbs, because in the cell core products that I use, they're actually real herbs that you could go to the garden or could go and get from a herbal store. Like they're foods that you recognize. And so we'll just pick the Indian culture or the African culture for where your husband was. They eat those herbs and spices that kill the parasites every single day.
Right.
If so, traditionally, because people will go, well, 100 years ago, why wasn't this a problem? Or
Mm.
200 or whatever. And in these cultures, would like, and I'm talking about not the Western style of eating that has now happened in some of those cultures to younger generations, but let's just pick the grandparents. The
Mm.
grandparents parents are eating, like even a chai, spicy chai drink, the Indian drink, is designed to keep parasites away. You're
Mhm.
not, if you're drinking that a few times a day, all of those herbs, and even with Harvey's stool test, that was one of the drinks that I had to start drinking as a breastfeeding mum to make sure I really developed and looked after that bad bacteria, was basically a chai drink that I made each day with all of those spices. So contextually, traditionally, these cultures eat the food to keep the bad bacteria, the parasites in check. So
Got
that's
it.
one thing. And then the other thing in the Western world, what I actually see more than parasites is we've lost our stomach acid, which is our digestion. Now, the word acid freaks people out, and I want it to freak you out on purpose now, because the first line of defense of stomach acid is to kill a parasite, right?
Mhm.
It's designed that if there's one in the ear and you breathe it in, it goes down into your stomach and the acid kills it off. So
Right.
and what depletes stomach acid is stress. It's a nervous system that's permanently sympathetic. And so what do we have in the West? We've got people with no stomach acid to kill off the first line of defense of their
Right.
parasites. We've got people not eating the spices and the herbs because we want quick, easy alternatives because we're all so busy, further feeding the parasites.
Mhm.
We've got people that travel because we've got disposable income going to India and Africa, and I'll come back to your husband in 1 second. So the ways we've lost all of our natural protectors,
Mhm.
the diet, the lifestyle piece of having the stomach acid, that's all gone. And so now we are in an environment we're exposed to them in so many different ways that it's hard for our bodies to actually keep them in balance like they were designed to.
Yeah.
And Amelia, you've really hit on a really good point with your husband, is when I'm talking to people, like in one-on-one appointments for years, they'd always be able to say to me, once we dug into it and I really asked them detailed questions in their health history, they'd say that I was always looking, and clients would literally say to me, as soon as you got what you were looking for, and I'll tell you what I was looking for in a second, I would lose interest. Like I'd move on with the conversation and I'd be like, okay, like it was like, done, conversation's over, let's get you better. And they'd be like, you didn't care about the other next 30, 40, 20 years. And I'd be like, I didn't. I got the magic thing that I needed. And what I was always looking for was when did they get exposed to this parasite? How long has it been in their body? So for your husband, as soon as I would have heard about, oh, this happened in India and Africa and he was so sick and I'm like, boom. Okay, he got the parasite there. And already I'm thinking to myself, okay, so he's had it for 7 years. So what is the damage that's been done in his body? And so what happens is you get it because you've got the symptoms. So we know it's happened. Everyone knows it's happened at some point because their body changed, their health changed, their symptoms started, or they just felt fatigued. Then for your husband, why? So two things. They don't all go unless you're taking herbs. So what I think is really sad is in the West, we've been taught, and people genuinely believe this, you only feed parasites if you eat sugar, and if you stop eating sugar, they miraculously die. That's not what happens because then a client will go on to say to me, exact words is, and then I started eating the sugar again and all my symptoms came back. So I'm
Mhm.
like, so what actually happened was you stopped feeding them, they hid. As soon as you started feeding them again, they're like, oh, let's party. We're still
So
here.
do they only eat sugar or carbohydrates?
No.
No.
So, but that's what we've been taught to believe,
Right.
right? So people go, oh, I don't crave sugar or I don't eat much sugar, so I don't have parasites. Because that's any kind of information you can find, it's all around sugar. And
Mhm.
then so people believe that you just stop eating sugar and they're gone. The problem is what
Right.
happens with that is you stop eating the sugar, and this is to help you with your husband as well. Or not that he was eating sugar, but they go into unless you're actually taking the herbal remedies to kill them off, they just stay dormant in your body. And so for some people, the dormantness might mean arthritis. It might mean high cholesterol. It might mean brain fog.
Right.
It might mean heart symptoms. It might mean high blood pressure. So it's not like it just
Right.
shows up as sugar cravings. What happens is we've been taught to connect. So I'll just pick on your husband for 1 second. He goes, oh, I'm not vomiting anymore and my weight's stabilized. It must have gone because that's
Mhm.
what we go see and believe. But
Hmm.
then we don't, and nor would I expect anyone to, we don't have the bigger picture to go, but actually, and I'm making this up, so for everyone listening, don't think this about Amelia's husband, but we don't have the bigger picture to go, but the iron's low, the cholesterol's high, the blood pressure's really high, the adrenals are fatigued, the kidneys are showing up. So we
Right.
don't have all of those other symptoms because we just go, but I'm not vomiting anymore, my poos are perfect again, I've got better energy, so I must be good. Right?
Right.
Because that initial, we go, oh, but I've gotten rid of those initial symptoms. I must be better. Yes, it might have taken a year, it might have taken 18 months. But the honest truth is, unless you've done herbs, like done, but taken herbs to get them out and actually flush them out, they're still there. They're
Mm,
like rebirthing, like they're creating eggs and they're multiplying, and you're getting more and more in your body. And the
mm,
problem with that is nobody knows how bad they feel until they often feel good again. So
mm,
even from the Parasite program you did, I've had so many people reach out and be like, oh my gosh, like 3 weeks later, I'm feeling miserable. Like now,
right.
like this is recent data. And they're like, so I must have felt like that before your Parasite program, but I felt like that for so many years. I was so used to it that
Mm,
during those 10 days, I actually felt better. Like not my best, but I felt so good that now it's only now that I'm like, gosh, how many years have I felt this awful for? And so just how humans often work is why do we have black and white and night and day? We need that contrast. And so if we just stay feeling miserable and just our body's just getting more and more depleted, like it's not like with say parasites, they do eat your iron levels. So if your iron goes down, you get fatigued. Well, you don't go, I know blood work really well, so I'll just give you some numbers. You don't go from 30, which is optimal iron levels, to 10 overnight. They will literally chew that iron and eat your energy slowly and steadily so that you're almost like, did I ever feel good? I think this is just my normal. And so that's what makes it so hard. And then just to finally wrap up the question on your husband, why he can start to feel good again, well, he probably, because I know your family well, so I'll give some actual personal insights. He probably started eating some fermented foods or took a probiotic or started eating more fiber like veggie foods and changed his diet. And so all of those things, I had some apple cider vinegar, like, all of those things are now changing the balance. So he's now starting to feed the good gut bacteria. And so feeding the good gut bacteria also, it's like a scale. So he won't get rid of them all, but by feeding the good gut bacteria, you're also bringing down some of those parasites or some of that bad bacteria. So then you can normalize it so much that you've gotten rid of those acute, those real immediate symptoms, and now you've just flatlined at a new level of
right.
normal, but not
Okay.
optimal. Yeah.
Okay. Got it. Got it. So what are the most common symptoms you have seen of parasites, and what more serious health conditions can they lead to?
Oh, so it depends on what you think of as the ultimate serious, but the ultimate serious is not parasites, it's cancer. So they definitely, and now we're seeing like this is actually where they're investing money into the research and the data of it. There is now research and data, medical journals writing about the connection between parasites and cancer and it being one of the contributing factors. And we're also seeing, from my point of view, I love my brain, I love learning. So for me, like I couldn't think of anything worse than getting dementia and Alzheimer's. And even last year, the New York Times wrote about a surgeon that was doing a brain operation and he pulled out a parasite. Like, this is in the mainstream media, this long. And the surgeon was like, it's like a photo of him holding it because he's never ever seen this. And he was just like, what the heck is this, basically? And so, parasites will contribute to Alzheimer's and dementia. Like, they get that in your brain, they're not just in your gut, they can be anywhere. So, they're going to cause those long-term consequences in terms of your brain health, your mental health. And then some really surprising symptoms straight from clients' mouths. A lot of clients are surprised at how much of an impact they have on their mental health and their well-being. So a lot of clients have been so surprised at how their anxiety has changed. I'm not going to say that it cures it, but they've definitely seen a significant difference in anxiety and depression in their mood. And then some really like just nice ones to get rid of is skin. So skin and parasites is big. A lot of people will see it coming out through their skin. Will see like eczema or psoriasis is a big one. And like hairdressers even know what is dandruff. Dandruff is parasites. And so here,
Really?
yeah,
What
hairdressers
about
know
cradle cat?
parasites,
Wow.
right? And we all know it. So the
Wow.
hairdresser knows it, right? So I have some very well-informed hairdressers that actually refer me their clients because it looks good on them if the client gets rid of dandruff, right? Like it's a win-win. And so that's very well known. And so a lot of skin conditions, then you've got like weight, like for people that are worried about you'll lose a lot of weight, equally like with your husband, you can also be underweight from parasites
Mm.
because they're eating all your nutrition, they're eating all your food. So people that often overeat, like I was a real overeater in my childhood. Once again, I can't say that I've got no proof other than symptoms to look back on and say I was probably born with parasites. But I could like for how little I was, I would eat like 10 times what my sisters would eat in a day, and I was forever hungry and forever complaining about being hungry. Like I was just in like when my parents would be like, enough is enough, I'd sneak into the pantry and eat more food,
Mm.
because I was literally like, I felt like a bottomless pit. Like, and so those things are parasites because you're needing to eat a lot because you're feeding you and like the monster in your body.
Right. Okay. Got it. Um, so what more serious health conditions can they lead to if those are some of the symptoms?
So
You said cancer, yeah.
cancer and Alzheimer's and dementia.
Yeah.
Then well, what do you think of with really serious so heart conditions
Heart.
are
Yeah,
big.
so
Yeah,
that's what I was
that's
wondering
what I
about.
wanted to check. I just thought I better check which
Yeah.
ones you. So definitely they play a big role in heart conditions.
Really?
100%. Yeah.
Wow.
And the other thing also, Amelia, I think to myself, like, say you've got a really serious heart condition. Looking into parasites, it's not going to make the heart condition worse. The only thing you can do is get a better result. Like it's either going to do nothing potentially, but I've never seen that, or it's going to significantly improve your lab results or your blood pressure and like that's why I'm so big into data because you can see the stuff shift and change. And I watch clients' blood work, like whether they actually do like lab testing for the stool testing, just like their CDC, which is their complete blood count, which is looking at infections on the body. So when those numbers are raised, that means you've got an infection in your body. Well, what is the infection? What is the virus? What is the parasite there? So we will watch those numbers change significantly and improve.
Right.
And so anytime you've got your immune system out of balance, that means all disease that starts from an immune system that's under attack. So that's your autoimmune conditions. So that was me with my Hashimoto's.
Yeah, that's one of the things I wanted you to talk about
Yeah.
because
So
autoimmune conditions are just like so many people I know, particularly women, I think, are struggling with them and really serious ones.
so I agree with you. And so like rheumatoid arthritis, autoimmune condition, that's all parasites. They're all hiding in your joint health.
Oh.
So, and then gallbladder issues, like where gallbladders had to be removed, that's parasites because where are they all stuck? They're stuck in that organ.
Well, I had endo from the time I was a teenager. What
So,
what's your
so did I. Like, I got
yeah.
diagnosed with that as well and told that I'd never be able to have a child. So, endo is a disease of inflammation. What is
Okay.
the cause of inflammation, right? For a lot of people, that will be parasites. I'm not saying
Okay.
that there's not other pieces. I'm not saying that, and you know me, parasites is not the catch-all to cure everything. It wasn't the catch-all to cure all of my symptoms by any means. It didn't fix all my blood work,
I just
but it
remembered you
helped.
saying on the parasite cleanse that most women who have any issues with their periods, you would put them down to
So,
parasites.
right, so when you've got so heavy bleeding,
Yeah.
or when you've got
Clotting.
clotting, yeah, that's the one. I was like, I could see it in my head. I just couldn't think it out loud. So clotting is parasites that are coming out that way. So literally, if people start to dig into clots, I'm not saying that you have to, you'll often see, and you witness this, people talking about it in the group, that see the eggs, that see the mucus. And so another thing is, which a lot of women don't also know, and now we're really getting into the bodily functions, because if you don't know, you don't know. So I've had a lot of women say to me, "Oh, I didn't realize we were meant to get mucus every single day." We're only meant to get mucus when we're ovulating. Any other time mucus is showing up, it's the eggs. You've got parasites.
Right.
So
Any
it's,
kind of discharge outside of ovulation, outside of
yeah,
what, 3 days a month or something,
yeah, yeah,
is
yeah. And
so.
if you've, Amelia, if you have had that since you're 11 or 12 of mucus every single day, you're not even going to think that's like, I've literally had women, like so many women like that.
So is BV parasites,
That's BV.
bacterial
Oh, yeah,
vaginosis?
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's basically, so what it is it's an imbalance of bacteria, right? What's caused the imbalance of your vaginal bacteria? Parasites.
Okay. And what about candida?
Parasites.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Even
Okay.
still with unique, and this is the thing about even the parasite protocol, the reason why I use all those different herbs is there's different herbs for each type of parasite. So you can't just take garlic and be like, I've gotten rid of all my parasites forever.
Right.
Just
I
like
got
with
it.
the unique things like vaginal overgrowth or candida, parasites might be 90% of those symptoms, but you
So
still
when you say
might,
parasites, you're talking about a whole lot of different species
yeah,
of
yeah.
whatever they are.
Yeah, so the actual term for parasite, what it actually means medically, like on the when the CDC defines it, it's a blood-sucking mammal creature. Basically, they say mammal, blood-sucking. So anything
Uh,
that's blood-sucking. So that means also, and this blew people away, mosquitoes.
a parasite.
Yeah, right.
Mhm.
And so a lot of people don't.
Fleas, ticks.
Parasites.
Yeah.
And how many of us get bitten by fleas, bed bugs, parasites?
Mm.
So that actually, while we think it's so weird and
So
mystical,
when we get bitten by them, are we contracting something?
yeah, if they're carrying and so if the mosquito that bites you over summer in the campground, if it's carrying an infection and it gets into your skin, then yes, you've got it now.
Okay. And that's one way that parasites are transmitted.
Yeah,
Okay.
and you can get parasites of different symptoms. So that mosquito can inject the parasite into your lymphatic system,
Right.
and then next minute you've got lymph conditions or you've got lymph cancer. You know, like so they get in a many different ways. And so it's like when people talk about, you like being an Aussie New Zealander, most of us have grown up in nature or gone on a camping holiday. Like it's very hard not to have been exposed to them at some, you don't even need to leave the country.
Mhm. Yeah, got it. Um, so one of the things that came up during the parasite cleanse, because there's all these Google warriors out there. So when I talk to people about it, or people on the course also brought it up, was mucoid plaque. Um, what is that? Can you tell me from your perspective what it is? And why is it so hard to find anything trustworthy on the internet about mucoid plaque and parasites? Um, I'm also interested in why doctors don't really talk about this stuff or even test for parasites.
So, major, major different things here. Okay, so the first thing is, so mucoid plaque, because it's an internet, it's a great Google word. Depending on which search engine you put it into, gets different, very extreme answers, right? So I'll start off at the worst. Mucoid plaque somehow connects to you're actually pulling out your stomach lining. So people, rightly so, absolutely freak out, and that will show up where it's like you're pulling out your stomach lining, and this practitioner is basically killing you, and your stomach is dying. So
Right.
that's the worst case of the Google connection between mucoid plaque. So it will be literally that you're pulling out your stomach lining, which I would be
Who's
like,
putting this stuff on the internet if it's
which
not
I
true?
would be petrified. Like, I don't want to pull out my stomach lining either. So I understand why anyone on Dr. Google also doesn't want to pull out their stomach lining. And so just because I'm a big believer in data and common sense and logic, if you are pulling out your stomach lining at any point, you will be bent over in pain, screaming to the 111 ambulance or whatever country, nine, whatever country you're in. Um, and you will be bleeding. Like there will be blood coming out your mouth. There'll be blood, like, and I'm meaning serious amounts of bloods, not a little bit of blood that parasites actually cause. So a lot of clients have come to me in the past where they've got blood in their stools, and that's parasites. And the doctor's gone, I don't know how to get rid of it for you, but you've got blood in your stool. So that's parasites. But this is like you're literally dripping blood every way, any way possible. So that's the worst case. And so when people talk about mucoid plaque, I'm like, with that amount of fear, are you meaning that you've pooed out your stomach lining? And they're like, yes, that's what I read. So I'm like, okay, well, first of all, I wouldn't be in a job. Cellcore wouldn't still be around. Those doctors would be arrested. Like the FDA would not be approving their products if they could possibly make you poo out your stomach lining. Okay, so, and you'd be in a lot of pain. So that's the first piece of the puzzle. That's the worst extreme when you get on Dr. Google of what you see about parasites. Then you've got all the people telling you that they don't exist. It's all a hoax. We're all just stealing your money and trying to like sell you products that don't work. So
Yeah.
there's that on Dr. Google as well. And it's like, well, what I always go back to and what you're a big believer in too is actually you're empowered to feel your own body. And at the end of the day, you've done something and you feel better. So obviously something worked. Whether it was the Para 1, the Para 3, the product, something
Mhm.
shifted in your body. So you've actually seen your own results, which is
Right.
really powerful to begin with anyway. But the other thing is, we've just said that basically almost everyone with a pulse has a parasite. So you need to take a herb at some stage to get rid of or keep them in check. So there's that side as well where we just don't have them. And I'm like, I don't even know how to tell people that you don't have them because I've just told you all the reasons you've got them. So if you still want to believe that you don't have them, I'm like, you just believe that piece on the internet. But that also feeds into your question around, well, why isn't there more data around this? Like, why is nobody funding this, right? Like, well, first of all, who's going to fund it? I can
Mm.
promise you the drug companies aren't funding it because they're making a lot of money out of cancer and they're making a lot of money out of heart conditions and they're making a lot of money out of cholesterol. Like, I've just witnessed in New Zealand with working with lab work for 10 years, we've just changed the threshold without anybody in the public knowing. Your cholesterol threshold has just changed before now a doctor can just prescribe statins. Why has that happened? It's not because your health has got it, they're trying to improve your health, they're trying to prescribe more drugs, right? And
Wow.
so it's like there's so many forces that want to keep you sick. Because where are we making money from? We're making money from prescription drugs. We're making money from cancer treatments. We're making money. And I found this really confronting during my pregnancy journey when I looked into how much money every country makes every time a woman has a C-section. Now, I had a C-section, so I'm not out here to, I needed one and it saved my life, and I'm really happy I've got a beautiful child. So I'm not out here to make anyone feel bad. But as an accountant, when I started to look at how much money we make every time we refer somebody for a C-section, we're talking 100,000, 200,000, 250 in different countries. Well, a home birth's free. So there's a big difference between the numbers that people are making. And so I say that point because no, but it's not really in the medical community's best interest to invest money in parasites because the drug companies are making no money off it. And if you actually manage, like, I've seen this with clients before where the government might be spending 200, half a million, $1 million on their treatments a year. And they might come and do a couple of parasite protocols and $4,000, $5,000 later, they're gone. They don't have the symptoms anymore. So $5,000 and $1 million. So at the end of the day, and it's sad to say, and I'm an ex-accountant, so I love money. Money goes around, right? So I get how money works. And so there's money to be made in all of this. And so that's why we've got to look at it. But equally, it's like Joe Dispenza with all of his research. Who's funded all of his brain research? He's funded that. He pays a team of scientists to work for him full time to prove what meditation does. He took that on as his personal legacy for how he wants to leave this world. Right? So he's had to fund that, and that's costing him millions and millions of dollars in terms of the technology, the labs, the research. So
Mhm.
who's going to fund that? It's the same principle. We kind of need somebody in the parasite world that's going to stand up and say, I'm happy to pay that cost. I'm happy to give millions and fund it because it's going to come from a Joe Dispenza, but the person in the parasite world
What
to.
about Salcor? Would they would they fund it?
So they've got a lot of, so they fund it in terms of all of their products. But
Okay.
what you've got there now, Amelia, is a conflict of interest.
Yeah,
Because
true.
what it does that make so yes,
Yeah.
they do fund it. And so back to the mucoid plaque, which I'll come back to that in a second, they've funded that research. And
Mm.
so they fund the research to prove their supplements work. But
Yeah.
for people that are doubters, they're gonna go, oh, but they've just funded to prove that their products work and they're no better than a drug company. So
I just want to take a step back because I just realized when I mentioned mucoid plaque, a lot of people won't have even heard of it or know what we're talking about. So, um, during your parasite cleanse, a lot of people were pulling these enormous, long, stringy things out of their feces, which were the parasites that were being excreted from their bodies. And some of them were like over a meter long. Like it was quite alarming. Well, people started saying, well, actually, that's not a parasite, that's mucoid plaque, which is why I'm wanting to address this here, because there seems to be a lot of misinformation out there on the internet, particularly if you look at these photos of parasites, people go, oh, no, that's not a parasite, that's mucoid plaque. So,
well, Amelia, so because I've dealt with this for 10 years, and on one-on-one clients, the biggest thing that derails them is they get on the internet and they go, it's not parasites, even though, I've had clients get out of wheelchairs and walk again on a parasite protocol, and we've healed, like the medical world has been like, yes, we've reversed your rheumatoid arthritis and all your blood work's perfect. And then they get on the internet and they'll be like, that was all a hoax. It's not parasites, it's mute. And I'm like, okay, but so because of that, and being in the trenches with clients and what happens and the people and society and the internet and all of these things, watching it for 10 years. And you know this because once again, you've witnessed it. That is why I make, even if you only do it once, I don't care, but you need to know this for yourself when you read the internet. I make every single client fish in the poo. That is one of the requirements for you to do a program with me. That is one of the things where it's like, if you're not willing to look in the toilet bowl at least once, you can't do this. I don't care. And so part of it is, I give you a skewer. You can use a chopstick, you can use whatever. But as you start to like pull it out, and you saw some people washing it and like just all the things, like human behavior, clients will weigh that, like just all sorts of things. And so when it's say with the para one, the that's mimosa, and so mimosa's like when you play with it, it would break. Like it's quite different to what's coming out. And so while people can think it's really gross, and you will have seen in the chat where some people will be like, "Look, I believe you. Like it's very clear these are parasites. Can I stop looking?" Like they ask for permission to stop looking at their toilet bowls, and I'm like, "Yes, because." A, you've experienced a change in how your body's feeling. You have literally pulled these things to pieces. You've played with them. You've done whatever you need to do to witness it. You realize that it's not mucoid plaque and it's also not the mimosa. It's not the product. So permission granted because you can stand there and go, when the naysayers come at you, actually, this is what I saw. And you even saw it in the photos. And this is why I really struggle doing parasite programs with one-on-one clients because you're up against so much. Because even when we did the nasal rinses, most people, this is another symptom of parasites. Most people have a nasal drip, they have seasonal allergies, they have something, a nasal blockage. And for years, I've been preaching about that being parasites. But even when they literally see the stuff come out, they'll still be like, is that a bogey? I'm like, last time I looked, and you went, right? But when so many people are sharing photos of what these little things look like, like you can't deny it anymore. And so some of it is you've almost got to see it to believe it. I understand that because that is the human psyche. There's no amount of research, there's no amount of data, like unfortunately experiencing something in your own body to believe it and to feel good. And then we've got so many people telling us, and we're so conditioned that health takes ages to get better. You can't notice any difference within 10 days. We wouldn't have lost this weight, all of these things. And so it's like, but you did. So why? So the mucoid plaque thing, back to really answer that, is obviously every time something comes up, this is why I love like it's I guess being under Cellcore's care is like because I use their products. Obviously, I can talk to their doctors and their lab technicians and bring up questions. And there's always new ones. After a decade of doing this, I think I've heard it all, and some other Google thing will show up, or especially now with TikTok and Instagram, and you literally cannot keep up with it. But the thing is, I went back to them and they've got data and research, and they're like, mucoid plaque medically, even on the CDC, on any medical website, it doesn't exist. There is no medical, so Cellcore's like, well, we're up against something that we can't prove because the medical world hasn't come out and said it even exists. They're not even willing to say mucoid plaque is a thing, right? So
Yeah.
even for me, like when Amelia first asked me, why don't you talk about it on the website? And I'm like, but like, what am I talking? Like, I can't back that up with a medical, like, at least with a parasite. Amelia can ask me anything about a parasite. And if I look hard enough, like even parasite stones, I can go to Harvard University and there's data and there's, articles and I can send it back to her. But with a mucoid plaque, what am I meant to put on my website? Because there is no data, medical data for it.
Is there anything on the CDC
On
website?
mucoid plaque, no.
No. There's
So
a lot on parasites, isn't there?
yeah. So they've got and that's the thing. I posted about this a few weeks ago on social media, and clients started going onto the CDC, and they suddenly saw they could literally diagnose the exact parasite that they've got from like one with a mosquito, one was like, oh my gosh, I got that in 2000, and then I got diagnosed with this, and this, and then and so they could trace that. And so for me, when you asked me, like, why don't you talk about mucoid plaque? I'm like, because now I'm the crazy person, because like at least parasites, I can go back to a lab test. I can go back to medical data. I can go back to medical research. I can go to Cellcore and get information. Para one, if you ask me about what that looks like, I can show you. I can do all these things. But I'm like, mucoid plaque, none of us can, like, nobody concrete can say what it is.
So
Technically,
do you think a lot of those images of mucoid plaque on the internet are actually just parasites, but people are calling them mucoid plaque?
yeah.
Okay, got
And
it.
and the other thing is though, what I do, because another thing when you Google mucoid plaque, another little pathway it goes down is like, so sometimes when you're pulling out parasites, and you'll see this like in the parasite stones, which is exactly the same as gallbladder stones. It's not just parasites, it will come with other things as well. So I do definitely believe that just like a gallstone, there might be other like shit, literal shit, that's been sitting in there that comes out with it. It's just like when you did your what'd you do straight after a few on the same day? Colonoscopy, is it
Yeah.
colonic?
Colonic.
When you
Yeah.
do a colonic, it's not just water that comes out, or just parasites that comes out. There's a bunch of things. Because the thing is, if you've got parasites in your body, your whole bowels have slowed down. So you're not actually like, even though you might be pooing every 12 hours, 24 hours, whatever, there's still sludge sitting in there. So there's absolutely undigested cabbage from 10 years ago sitting in your stool, sitting in your large intestines with the parasite. So can I say that I don't mind preaching on my soapbox from, can I say that every single poo is just parasites? No, it's pulling out other things with it. That's not just a poo, like your normal standard poo. So it can definitely pull other things, yes. And so I think that's where it's like it gets into the gray, because it's like, and it's even like, when people started washing the parasite, stuff did fall away. So, but they were left with that string of whatever that looks like. And that's the other thing is also we pee out parasites and people will literally see strings, like white strings. It's almost like the tampon, like that white, yeah. So people will see that, and that's like, so they can be very stringy, and that's not mucoid plaque. Just like, is a clot technically a parasite, or is it a blood clot?
Mm.
So there's that, so when a clot comes out, could it be eggs? Could it be parasites? Is it also stale blood? Is it also other toxins?
Mm.
Absolutely.
Combination. Yeah.
Just like with your oral health, is your root canal just a parasite, or the gum infection just a parasite, and a whole bunch of other things, all the same thing.
Okay.
So
So
that's what makes it so vague. No one can come out. I can't even say disprove it. So it's like, well, how do you have a conversation? And the other thing, Amelia, is who are the people starting the mucoid plaque discussion? It's not like, so like, if you don't believe in parasites, you could literally say to Dr. Todd White, I'll just pick those two, and Jade Davidson, let's get on the phone, let's get on Zoom, let's nut this out and talk about it. When I go looking for like, who is the science and the research behind mucoid plaque, so I can phone them up and have like a debate like this. Well, there's no one to pin it on. Does that like, so it's like, oh, well, how do you have a robust discussion that's going to help everyone? Whether, even this is a robust discussion, whether you believe what I'm saying, telling Amelia or not, we're able to like talk these things out. But when it comes to like even Cellcore, with like when I talk to them again, they're like, oh, like what, like it's just like literally, there's no name to be like, this doctor said this, this, and this.
All right. Oh, Shelley, I'm only halfway through my questions and we've only got 5 minutes to go. So I'm really, really disappointed about this. We might have to do a part two. Um, I think I told you I had a really terrible experience doing a practitioner put me on a parasite cleanse a couple of years ago, and I got so sick. I couldn't get out of bed. I couldn't eat. I was vomiting, had diarrhea. I lost a ridiculous amount of weight in 1 week. I was so dysfunctional. I was in so much pain. It was horrific.
I
Uh,
remember you telling me.
so, can a parasite cleanse hurt your body or your gut lining? And what's your approach? What's your approach in your programs that makes them different from like what I experienced? Because I now know, like I didn't want to do another one. I knew I
I know you
needed,
did it.
I didn't want to, and I got in touch with you, and I was like, I'm really scared. This is what happened. And you assured me that it would be different. And to be honest, it was a breeze for me. Like I think it really helped that I did your 10-day health reset first and got my liver in a really good place. So I think for people going in with concerns or other health issues, I would recommend that they do that. I don't know if you would.
Me too,
Because
definitely.
I feel like if I'd gone straight in and done the parasite cleanse, I would have had a huge detox and it would have been really brutal. And I
Well,
do a lot of detoxing in my everyday life anyway,
the
but this
other
was
thing
another
though,
whole level. Yeah.
Amelia, is if you hadn't have done the 10-day health first, you just would have had to have gone, I would have made you go way more gentle. So you
Yeah, so I could
just
get
would have,
through it in nine
yeah,
days,
yeah,
and I barely had any side effects.
yeah,
It was really easy for me
yeah.
to do. I
So
know a lot of other people struggled, so I
So
don't
how
want
I
to
would
invalidate.
how I personally manage it is, if you haven't done any pre-work, but I'll tell you what that means in 1 second, then what we can do is a lot gentler. And Amelia, you can comment on this too, but I feel like unfortunately in the natural health world, people have promised a lot of things that aren't always true. And so I promise, and you can tell me if you think this is true, that I'm really in that group. If you're engaging and asking me questions and wanting help, I'm going to help you problem solve. Like, I'm not just like, here you go, off you go for 10 days, see you at the end. Like, I'm in there engaged, helping, problem solving, answering. So it's not just off you go. And it's like, so if a symptom does show up, and I'll pick, say, more on the 10-day health reset for you, where more symptoms showed up than on the parasite, it's like, okay, Amelia, do this, try this, So there's that real hand holding, which I think is really important. But a couple of things is, I 100%, and to the point that, like, Amelia, I have to do a lot of nervous system work and like deep breathing on this, because I'm like, I also can't protect everyone, and I also can't hold this. Like, this is my whole problem, because nothing makes me sadder, and I've seen this a lot recently, where people will just send out a link to a parasite program, and it's just the herbs and the like heavy numbers, but you're not actually looking at the liver and the drainage pathways. So whether you did the health reset first or not, one of the requirements is I give everyone liver support as part of your parasite herbs. Then we're also doing something for the lymphatic system every single day. Plus, I'm making sure everyone's pooing, everyone's hydrated, they're drinking enough water. So we're actually looking after all of your drainage pathways to make sure they're coming out. And then another real key component for me is, it's not because, and you know me, I'm not worried about people's weight or like bloating or anything, but that tells me if the parasites aren't coming out of the body. And I did this and people don't always like it, but they like the end goal. I wouldn't let people do the next day's protocol numbers until that pooed, until that bloating had shifted. Because
Yeah.
if it's not shifting, it's accumulating day on day after day. And that's when you get really serious sickness. That's when your liver tells you that it's overburdened. That's when the kidney starts kicking in. And so I 100%, and like I say, I have to let it go because I become like this godmother and I'm like, Parasite, like I can't stop people. It's not my thing to like protect everyone. Parasite cleansers can be horrific. Like that's the other thing where on the internet, it's like, well, I also can't say that they're not going to be horrific because if you do it on your own and you don't have help or you have the wrong help or you haven't looked after your liver first and you haven't looked after your adrenals, it can totally wipe you. It can cause a lot of harm. And
Yeah.
I had
And
one.
I will say I found it easier than a lot of people, but I was taking some of the supplements from the 10-day health reset that other people weren't taking. So 80B5 plus, and I was taking the NutriClear and the Biofiber every day, which I think just made it so much easier for me.
Totally agree. And Amelia, I'm always looking at updating things. So even I like, and once again, this kind of feeds back into my Joe Dispenza example, is there is like, yes, okay, I've worked with parasites for a decade, but mass numbers show patterns. And because of my accounting background, love data, love patterns, I'm always looking in and analyzing, not from a perfectionist point of view. I've luckily, most of the time freed myself of that. Um, but I'm always looking at it from a what is the data showing? And so what happens with this is the more people you get going through a program, the more data you can start to see. And why I'm telling you this is that so my reflection, other than the mucoid plaque, wink wink from the last parasite program was I hand on heart believe there was a big difference. Everyone got results. I know that. There was a big difference between people taking NutriClear, whether they'd done the reset before or 10 years, like at some point with me, because there's some people that, have been on NutriClear for years and done whatever. They've done these things. And so there was a big difference between, and this is just a numbers game, right? Because if you don't have, like, when I had smaller groups doing parasite programs, well, when two people are taking NutriClear and eight aren't, the data's not really that great. Like in terms of it's not enough. But when you've got 80 people doing it last time and say 35 of them are taking NutriClear and 45 of my math
Really saw the difference.
right? And to the
So are
point
you
that,
changing the protocol now to
well,
include?
the problem is, and this is like, it's a very real question. As a practitioner, you go, what is the barrier to entry? When does the price
Okay,
get
yeah.
to, does, so so this is always my problem. And because what happens is, if you don't believe in this and this is all weird and all the rest of it, the barrier to entry, most people can kind of stomach, right? There's a certain price point you go, I'll just give it a go. And at the end of the day, I just want people to experience it, feel better. So
Yeah.
I'm still in two camps around it, Amelia, where it's like, yes, I can bring it into the program. I can
You can
enforce.
call it the deluxe package.
That's what I mean. And so, well, so just like this is real life data and this is how we work in the practitioner work. Well, this is how I work. And this is why, like, Amelia can be like, I worked with you 5 years ago. And what the hell are you talking about now? Because I am always changing and improving. And it's like, Amelia might do the parasite program in 10 years and be like, what the heck, But what I've come to, whether once again we'll see the data and you'll be there to see the data, is we're going to do a pre-Zoom call before it starts and be like, hey, this is what we've seen. This is my honest experience, my honest truth. If you choose to now, with 2 weeks to go and get the NutriClear, you can. You don't have to. I can hand on heart say to my and also Amelia, I'll just tell you this one more thing before we finish. What I do know, hand on heart, because I've tried 21-day programs, I've done 10, 7, so I can't get results in 5, 7 days, but we can in 10. So I'm always updating, always changing. And so that's why I can say, on the Zoom call, I know that NutriClear helps, but you're still going to get results without it. It's just up to you what you can afford. So, like I say, will that be our solution going forward? No, we might just make it that we might see that the results are just so much better that it just has to be a part of it. But NutriClear is a game changer.
Okay. Um, Shelley, I really have only got through half my questions, so maybe we could schedule another Zoom at some point because I think there's another whole run of things that people this will stimulate and other and more questions. So can we please do that at some point? But just before we wrap up, I have heard that you have become like a leading authority in parasite cleansing internationally. Can you just give me a little overview of that? Who is saying that and why?
Well, because I've done it for well, I can't say for the longest worldwide, that's not true. I've put in 10 years in the trenches of doing it. And then obviously I have some of the biggest programs of people doing it.
Yeah.
And then so Cellcore definitely are like, you are the leading, like we don't have the practitioner enough. And they can see that based on ordering, right? Like they can, and so the new, like I literally in Australia and New Zealand, every time Cellcore comes in, I buy it all out. Like other practitioners are struggling to get it because of the sheer quantities. And so the supplement labs or whatever we want to call them, they're like, oh, she's the leading expert. Because what they're basing it on is numbers of stool testing done, numbers of purchases, like the numbers coming through on my accounts
Mm.
is now that's what they benchmark it. So any lab company, like supplement industry is also money making
Yeah.
industry too. So they track all that data and they can see their leading top practitioners. And it's not that I'm there to get those points. Like I don't mean it from a KPI point of view, but to answer your question, that's how they look at it. And
Got
they
it.
go, that number of things coming through means that she is an expert in this. And so Cellcore would have their top 5 practitioners from around the world, and they measure that basically based on if you're ordering so much, you're clearly getting amazing results because otherwise you'd be tanked in the world. Like people are gonna,
Yeah.
you know,
But in terms of your own data, in terms of how your clients and the people doing your programs are faring post-program, 5 weeks, 5 months, 5 years, or whatever, is that,
oh,
how
so
you.
that's a great question because you know I love data. We've got that will be another hour. But no, I'm just teasing. So how I can track it personally as well is their blood work changes.
Mm.
I've got clients that have and even like kudos to her. Like I can't believe she wrote this in a book. I bought the book and I'll tell you with the lens of literally just looking for the word parasite. And as soon as I got it on page 30 or whatever it was, I was like, job done, well done, Dr. Libby. So Dr. Libby's come out in her book, Fix Iron First, and I've been ranting about
What's
iron,
it called?
Fix Iron First.
Fixed iron
So
first.
that's her
Okay.
latest book. And I've been talking like from a conventional medical lab testing, low iron, you just feel awful. Like most women are depleted and feel absolutely fatigued and all the things. But you always go, okay, if you're supplementing or eating a lot of iron, what's eating it in your body? It's parasites. And so I'm seeing these clients that have had IV, and so doctors are starting to refer people to me because they can't ignore the data either. And this is why I love data, and this is why my accounting background really helps me, and this is why I feel really confident going to sleep at night, even when the internet tells you that parasites are all made up and mucoid and she's a fake. The doctors also go, well, we've had this person for a decade, 20 years, never get beyond an IV drip of iron. They've worked with Shelley now for 6 months and done her parasite herbs. And all of a sudden, their iron is perfect. All of a sudden, we're not funding IV iron for them anymore.
Oh,
What has happened? Right. And so now more and more doctors, I even have doctors do the parasite program. Obviously, I don't be like in the group, hey, this is Dr. Meredith doing the program. And so I've got like, and even my very first client that I worked with, Meredith, who's on my website, so she doesn't mind me sharing, obviously, her gynecologist was like, look, I can't get you better. But there's this woo-woo like functional nutritionist Shelley, and she's having great results, and she tells everyone they've got parasites, but it seems to be working. And so literally it cured all back to the endo. It cured her endometriosis, and she's on my website still talking about it, that it cured her endometriosis. And the gynecologist was also like, we were at the point we were going to have to do a history, like, and she was so young. And he was like, look, for all her woo-woo herbs, the result is. And so while humans, like us as individuals, struggle to believe the proof in the pudding of our bodies, doctors and surgeons are going, Well, we don't really believe in it. We're not taught about it. It's all very odd. But all her blood work, she's very clinical sound. She like all of this is proving
Mm,
that she's getting results. So we're just going to refer you. And so they literally, and the other thing that makes me feel really confident is because I see very sick people and I always have, that means that all of these herbs, they're going through cancer doctors, they're going through surgeons, they're going through, like all of these medical practitioners and professionals are reviewing the herbs. And not one time in a decade have I had a person say to me, look, my medical practitioner has said, no, I can't do this because those herbs are unsafe. They,
right.
the medical practitioners and professionals will go, I know all those ingredients. They'll go, the worst they'll say is, you're wasting your money, but good on you. I can't see how a bit of like, garlic's gonna fix anything, but give it a go. So they might foo-foo the money you're spending, but when you get the result, they'll always be like, oh, okay. Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's like, and they'll be the first to be like, yep, you're better. They won't then go, oh, necessarily, it was definitely the parasites that worked. But, the patient, the client can work it out for themselves. So that's why and so my most common client coming to see me is my doctors refer me to you because I'm too hard. Nobody can get me better. So I get all the too hards. And so if you're in the too hard camp, you've probably got parasites.
Um, Shelley, just before we wrap up, one last question. What is the wildest parasite story you've ever seen in a client of
Oh my,
yours?
they're like I like it's so I know that I thought about that and I'm like I've just got so many
Right.
like they're just wild. It's a
Yeah.
wild like when people I don't know this will grow some I don't like is it the wildest when people oh no I know my wild one in clinic this was like 2 years into it and I was like oh my gosh they were in my office back when I had a physical office and you could literally see it was them plus their husband there watching it, and you could see it under their skin, and we could literally move it through their body.
Gross.
That's gross, right?
Yeah.
Like that's pretty wild. I wish if I was a surgeon or something, I'd probably see more in the head. But so I've literally, and that wasn't the one and only time. That was the first time. So I found it like I was like literally like trying to keep a straight face and stay professional, but at the same time be like, I want to vomit. Like this is just disgusting. Um,
Mm.
but so wild, but like wild also like the amount that are in women's ovaries
Mm.
as well. Like so that is
Why? Why in the ovaries?
well, they can be anywhere, right? Like
Right.
it's like everywhere in your body. But also, I guess for me, another wild one is like when people feel them like in their hips and well, also the wheelchair one client, like because they were just so like I've got so many stories, Amelia. Like so that's why it's hard. It's like what is it the worst in terms of the wild like, but also just the length.
Mm.
And I think my wildest one was this year in February with that Parasite program when the person I'd never seen in 10 years. I'd never seen, I know it's happened since, but I'd never seen somebody vomit it up before. And she was like literally expecting, I knew she was. She didn't say it, but I knew that this is what she'd be thinking in her head, was that, oh, I'm gonna vomit up the pills. There was no pills to be seen. There was just this big, long, yeah, it's
Hey,
wild.
thank you so much for your time. Let's schedule in a part two ASAP because I'm sure people will be interested when they watch this. And I'm so excited. I'm doing it again with you in July. So bringing some of the whānau along for
I
my
know.
next ride. Yeah. So looking forward to it. And thanks. Thanks for everything.
Thank you, Amelia.
Have a great day, Shelley.
You too.